First up, we've got a man who so eloquently documents the amazing history of the Destiny community, who's seen booming success covering games like Elden Ring, Bloodborne, and most recently COD Zombies, Mr. Evan F. Thank you for joining, brother. Appreciate you.
Hello.
Next, we have the leader of the Hammy Squad, known for his 3 world's first titles, crazy solo challenges, and variety streams that bring good vibes and absolutely demolish your sleep schedule in the process. Glad, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
And then last but not least, we have one of the most helpful creators and talented teachers in the Destiny community, creating guides to help players of all skill levels conquer endgame content like raids and dungeons, whether in a team, but especially flying solo. ManoDestra, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
For
Thanks
joining
for
the show.
having me, guys.
Appreciate it. So today's basically we're focusing on like venturing into the next stage of Destiny. We'll be covering some pretty hot topics about things that are going on in the game right now, but also talking about like what happens after the final shape and what kind of things can the community expect. Like, do you guys have any expectations on that front? So I will start with this question. With player retention and trust being primary concerns for Bungie, what can the studio do to regain your interest beyond the initial launch window of Final Shape? So just those, maybe first couple weeks, especially given the quality of games released in 2023. Glad, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, so that question, definitely, I do have a lot to say regarding that topic in general, but I'll try to keep it as succinct as I can, basically. I think, I'm going to say years ago, I sort of started sensing, because, I used to love playing the game every day and grinding the game every day. But, I don't want to like make this about me or anything. I want to make it about people with like similar.
I want it to be your experience as well. Like I know, during the era of the Red War, you were one of like the primary streamers holding it down on a daily basis. So like coming from that perspective to now where, you stream variety full time. So
it's a handful of different things, right? I think first of all, and this is something that I think a lot of people overlook, is when Destiny came out, and Destiny still is, its own sort of genre. Destiny's not an MMO. Destiny's not ARPG. Destiny isn't just a full shooter. It's not a PvE game strictly. It's not a PvP game strictly. It's just kind of its own thing. When it came out, it was so fresh and everybody loved it, and it was a big community thing, and it was just so exciting coming from Bungie, who had made other games that people had played.
Yeah.
And when Destiny 2 came out, it still felt like that. There was so much excitement, but I think a lot of people overlook what I call franchise fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Like, this game has been out for a long fucking time now, and it's been out for many, many years. And if you include Destiny 1, it's been out for an even longer amount of time. And you can only do that so much. You can only sort of strum that same chord for so long without massive, huge changes to the game and overhauls and big expansions, which we don't, we see so few now.
Yeah.
Before people just honestly just start getting burnout and fatigued from the franchise. So I think that's a big part of it, and there's not really much you can do about that. And I think we're gonna we might touch a little bit on that later. But there's not really much you can do about something like that without totally overhauling the game, right?
Yeah.
Second thing is, a couple years ago, sometime around like Forsaken, I started seeing a big directional shift in the content of the game. And this was right around the time, when Activision, when they separated from Activision, when they separated for Vicarious Visions. And, I wasn't really tunnel visioned at that time. And I noticed a huge change in the content that was coming out, the amount of content, how they were releasing it, how they were telling the story, the drip feed model. We started getting hints of the seasonal model, how the seasonal model was dropped. And I just started seeing all these changes, and they just weren't something that was of my tastes, right? And I knew that the type of player that I am and the type of, the people that are like me and the type of content that they want to grind and they want to dive into, that whole market of gamers, this game was just heading in a different direction.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I was actually just talking about this a little bit. Bungie is a business. They like, I know some people might not like to hear this, but like, they're not your best friend. They're not your family. You might have friends there and stuff, but they're a business. They're in it to make money. They're in it to sell copies. They're in it to do what is best for their company and their business. And that's another thing that I think a lot of people overlook. And that is to sell as many copies as frequently as possible with every expansion as possible to your average player. Now, who is your average Destiny player? That is the person that doesn't even know who any of us are. That's the person that doesn't even go on Twitter. That's the person that doesn't watch Twitch. It's the person that has a game from a company that they love, that doesn't give a fuck about what's going on the business side of things. They just have a game that they can boot up with their son and goof around and not really pay attention and have fun. And when a new piece of content comes, maybe they hop on Twitch real quickly and say, those are the people that might say, hey, is this worth getting back into? That's your average Destiny player. And that's who Bungie makes the game for. And years ago, I started realizing this, and I knew that I came to a crossroad. It's like, okay, I can either sit here and pretend that this game is, try to morph it into the game that I want it to be. But all that does is that just makes you angry, and that makes you complain, and that makes you criticize, and that makes you try to force this game into being what you want it to be. Or you can just accept the fact that this game is not made for that hardcore grinder player that you might be, and this game is made for a much more broader audience, and there's nothing fucking wrong with that. Bungie's just doing what a business does, and you can play it how Bungie wants you to play it.
Yep. And I think,
what I mean?
That's such a good point. And I think what you mentioned too about like, when you talk about how they're a business and they want to sell as many copies as possible, for Bungie, I'd argue that's even more important than probably 99% of the various game studios out there, because they have an unbelievable overhead to run this game. So like, actually, creating something that's a profitable business model and really pushing those sales of major expansions is not only like essential, like they genuinely, I mean, like, according to last week when they were talking about how Sony bought them out, they apparently were at trouble of going under before the acquisition. That was an article that was detailed last week. And I don't think anybody realizes that's something that's going on. So when they make these decisions, they're always business driven. It's just like, I feel like, how do they balance that with the interests of the players? And I feel like a lot of times
people don't want to accept that.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, you just have to play the game how Bungie wants you to play it, and you either do or you just don't play it, or you're just a miserable person. And to the TLDR of the question is, what would Bungie have to do to get me back playing the game regularly? It's pretty much an unrealistic thing. And I don't expect them to do it. And I think it's an unrealistic thing to expect it from them, especially if they're working on another game. I mean, you would have to make the game have these insane, crazy community event puzzles and just this extremely difficult content that just isn't a smart business decision. So I don't think anyone here can sit here and like look their computer screen in the eye or their camera in the eye and say, oh, all that's coming back, you'll be good. I just 100%. Don't think we're getting it. So you need to adjust your expectations and your playtime and what you want out of the game, and that's how you become the happiest Destiny player that you can be if you're somebody that's looking for like a difficult grind.
And I think you're saying things that people don't necessarily want to hear, but is absolutely true. Because if you look at like community feedback over the last year, 2 years, I mean, a lot of it, I would say player sentiment for the most part is relatively negative, and it's usually comes from like the vocal minority that grind this game 24/7, and they're trying to find their gaming outlet to just be Destiny. And they're
burning themselves out.
They burn themselves out 100%.
Yeah.
On a counterpoint, I do think there's ways that they could alleviate some of that. I think they've gone far too much like into the direction of like the more casual gamer. And it seems like there's ways that they could roll out an expansion like similar to Forsaken, for example, where, and obviously like that's like the ultimate drawback, right? It's the one we always reference, but where there's like
was peak,
it was peak, and it was because
and they had so many people working on the game, and we just don't have that right now,
which is true. And one of the things I think that made it so great, and then we'll get to Evan and Mano, but was like the natural progression of player driven stories. So like you had the campaign, we did the Tangled Shore, and then you beat that, you hit the light cap, you do the Barrens. Now you unlock the end game destination. You do the Dreaming City stuff. All of a sudden you're discovering Ascendant challenges. You're leading up to the raid, you're power leveling, you're doing Blind Well, all these different things. Then you get to raid day. Glad, who's on our panel, and his team get worlds first. They unlock the Corrupted Strike. They, it sets a curse on the Dreaming City, 3-week cycle, and at the pinnacle of that player discovery, you find the Shattered Throne in the open world, the first 3-player activity. Like that natural progression, instead of like these time-gated things that they tend to implement where it's like, okay, you've reached step 7, check back next week. It's like, it's just a much more natural way, I feel like, that the game could be developed. Or, if there's any feedback that comes from this, it's like that, I feel like that type of what I would consider progression rather than time gating is so much more favorable, and I don't think necessarily has to be hardcore or casual. I think that's just a game design decision. Like obviously there's resources that are tied to that, but anyways, Mano, let's go over to you. What are you looking for them to regain your interest past just a few initial weeks?
So for me, I'm right with Glad. Like all those things that made Forsaken and things for me specifically, I really dive into those solo missions. Like I really like the Whisper, really like Outbreak Zero. I think those community secrets are really cool. And I think the thing that I would like to see, what I think they need to say, it is that we understand that we're a business. The whole community needs to understand it. It is a business. It's exactly right. They need to get butts and seats.
Yeah.
I think that they need to do something where they say we're going to take longer with content, because the GDC theory of like, you guys watch that theory of like, over delivery and all that other stuff. Did you guys watch that, guys?
Yes.
Well,
The whole
like watch it or like
From
the
a ways back?
presentation?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
it was when Justin was on and he was talking about it, and they said it's not in terms of, overperforming or over delivery. The whole idea is that it's like a train station, right? And so the idea is constant delivery instead of having an over delivery. What I need to see from them is I don't need the trains to run on time anymore. I just need the train not to run uphill. What's happening right now is
Yeah.
they're trying to get out so much content so quickly. It's not being done at the level that it has been done in the past. And we're starting to get what I call the Marvelication. You know how like the Marvel movies used to be like the top tier movies and everyone went and they were an event, right?
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
lot of people, at least most people. We're getting to the point now where there's just so much stuff, it's meaningless. I think for them, not just with the episodes, I think they need to take a step back, take more time to get into more content, because this idea of we can't over deliver means that they're going to at best deliver mid-tier content fast, or they're going to under deliver. And the fact people can sense that, like we can sense when there's not a really great product. It works for the money people, and for from what I've seen, it seems like the money people are starting to drive the show. But money people aren't good at creative things. They're really good at examining trends. They're really good at being like, oh, this is going to make us money. They're not good at creating a good product that people enjoy. They're good at maybe seeing, oh yeah, that person might have a good idea that we can monetize. But that's what they need to do. They need to step back. They need to let creative people take more control, because you can make money off of a product for so long. But Glad's right. It's been 10 years. It's 10 years. And if they're going to continue this, then what has been working the last couple of years does not work anymore.
Yep.
Which I look at it like this: adversity is an opportunity. You have a choice. You can continue to go down this path and milk this the way that you have been milking it, or you can say, we're going to change course and we want to continue Destiny in some way, shape, or form, but it's going to have to be a major reset. Some people are like, Destiny 3 won't solve all the problems. Well, neither will Destiny 2. It's not a box problem. It's a investment and direction problem. And people will come back to the game, whether it's hardcore or casual, but I think they're chasing their tails. I think they're chasing the success that Halo was. I think they're still defined by that whole legacy of Halo, and then how groundbreaking, like I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but strong Taken King was, and they're always just trying to get back to where it was. And I think that they're trying to chase that. One of the reasons why they went free to play is because of Fortnite, Apex Legends. They're chasing the industry, and instead of chasing the industry, they need to take a step back, figure out what direction they want to go to, and do something new. Because at this point, I've played the strikes. Another strike isn't going to do it, right, guys? Like if there's a new strike in the game, you don't care. Like that's the whole thing. So for me, I want them to say, we're going to change directions. We're going to take some time off. We're going to develop some stuff. Marathon is coming out. If you're interested in that, check it out. Get some help from Sony. Take a year or two off at least. That would be the thing I would want to see. Now, that's hard because from them as a revenue standpoint, I'm not sure if they can do that or not. That's the real question.
I would say you made a lot of really good points. I would argue that that's just not a realistic scenario for the studio at this point. Mm-hmm. But I do want to touch on a few things that you mentioned there, which is, so you talked about like taking a step back and making a really big DLC. And in the previous panel, we actually talked about how do we feel this? So to be clear, the delay of 4 months to June is not confirmed by Bungie at this point. It's been noted by sources of, with the layoffs and things like that. We're still waiting for official confirmation if that's June. Is it happening at all? Could it be later? Which I feel like is kind of weird. So I would love to see communication on that, like sooner rather than later. This like Thursday, at the absolute latest, probably, to be like, hey, there's speculation your game and the marquee 10-year finale of your Light vs. Dark Saga is delayed. Like, is it actually happening or not? So there's that piece to it. And what we discussed was like, is that 4-month delay even enough to make a difference of like taking what they deem to be a good expansion and making it great? Or do they need to take a longer period of time to work on it and deliver something that's like truly special and actually going to get players back into the game? Because something else that we've talked about is like, it seems like they've kind of been maintaining the player base, if not like bleeding a little bit of like the community that supported their game for a really long time, versus like influxes of new players. Like obviously it happened short term with Lightfall, but that typically falls right back off. And another point that I actually drew from a Twitter poll this last week when I started polling data. And obviously the results are biased because they're people who follow me and likely share some sort of my ideals. But I polled with over 1,100 votes on Twitter. What would you prefer? Huge, less frequent DLCs, small, more frequent DLCs, or frequent but not time-gated content? And 71.5% of the responses were huge, less frequent DLCs. Like, encouraging them to take the time to actually flush out a content release and take the time to deliver it properly. To your point, man, of like,
you want to know another reason why? Because fucking people hate being told how to play the game, at what pace to play.
Damn
right.
Which is exactly what I was
Nobody
getting
likes
at.
that shit. But well, all right, I take that back. Nobody likes that shit except for the main casual audience that the game is made for. But that's the thing, is one thing that will always stick with me and it always kind of like just give me a sour taste is when Bungie years ago said, we're finally ready to make the game for our hardcore dedicated fan base. We're finally ready to give you guys that Destiny that we always wanted that we couldn't. Yeah. And that shit, ever since that was said, that they went the opposite fucking direction.
There's a couple of moments like that, Glad, like when they said we're going to do the new focus on PvP. It's a lot of like, who's saying that? Who's taking the leadership on that? I think you're exactly right, because they're like, oh, we're going to delve into the hardcore audience. We're going to be the refocused PvP focus. Who's saying it? Like, of course, it feels good to say it, but
of course,
who's doing it?
And I know, like, I don't mean to sit here and like be aggressive towards them, but I also think that things like this that happen over and over and over need some accountability, because it's
Yeah.
just going to keep happening, because all that it does is it's just continuous hype and continuous promises that are just never fulfilled.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
mean,
just going to keep
it's
doing it unless people call them on their fucking shit.
yeah,
it's fair to say that there is a level of hypocrisy that definitely needs to be accounted for, and there's a level of, like, even going back to what you said, Mano, about the presentation. I always think about that presentation too, and I think that they need to clear the air on that presentation specifically, because that's what they're telling players is a completely different story than what they're telling other developers.
yeah,
What they're telling players that we want to deliver this great new thing every single year, but what they're telling other developers is, Miyamoto is wrong. Don't make something quality, make something that you can push out and then fix later. And it's like, as a player, more than anything else, I understand the business side of that because they have to get stuff done on time for their investors and for all the different people that basically, they need to send money to and pay all the bills. Like, I get that. It's a business. But I feel like at the same time, as a player and as somebody that wants to be kind of respected as a player and as people that, I mean, like, generally, I think everybody wants to be like a very clear, like, hey, this is what we're doing, and then follow through with that, and then be consistent with following through with that,
yeah.
because the consistency is my biggest question with everything.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I just kind of put in my own answer for like past final shape. Consistency is my only big worry, because they can nail final shape and give people what they want, but is that because of the reactionary, kind of discretion of it? Is it because we're being very reactionary to what people want now? Are we using the buzzwords now to try to get everybody in and excited on this thing? Or is it because we genuinely want to do this? I'm not talking about the Bungie developers. I'm talking about upper studio management. Is it because of what we want to do, or is it because of what we have to do? And I don't like that it feels like it's because of what we have to do. That
Well,
makes me feel like they just got put in a corner.
And I think you make like there's so many good points that have been made. Like, I think a lot of times right now what's happening is like short-term profits being taken instead of like that long-term gain. So like you look at studios like Halo Infinite right now, they've gone back and they've refined what they launched with and have just iterated on the game to the point where like people can't really ignore it anymore. And it was considered all but a dead title like 2 months after launch, and that audience has just exploded over the last like few months because of all the updates they've been adding to it. Cyberpunk's DLC, absolute banger from the base game to now. Like, there's games doing that and iterating on their original base product where people are like, yeah, the game's pretty fucking good now, actually. You guys should go check it out. And like,
There's another game that fits right with that mold. It's Fortnite. Remember when Fortnite first came out, guys? It was Save the World. It was just that building tower game, and then they had Battle Royale. Boom. That's all it took. But see, it was such a new thing when it came out. That's what Destiny needs. It needs a whole new gameplay loop of some sort. I don't know what
and
it
they
is.
did it
Yeah,
again.
I mean,
they did
I
that
agree.
again too. It's
I
really
agree.
quickly, just to jump in real fast, and then I'll let you actually answer your question because I
Yeah.
want to get your perspective. But Fortnite did that again from the base release as well. They took the Save the World. They came out with the BR. The BR started to die off because building became this prominent thing. What did they do? They added no build. Huge wave of players come back. That starts to die down. What do? They bring back the OG map. They just had over 44 million players concurrent on a single day for the launch of their like near base map, which is just, that's insane. Like, think about that from a gaming perspective. That's genius moves, like, because they're listening to what their community wants over these long periods of time.
We love Fortnite. We love Fortnite. I keep seeing those little kids in the room, bro.
No Man's Sky was another one too. So Evan, sorry, but I wanted to note that it's just like, that's crazy
I get
to think
that,
about.
but I would say that those scenarios are all a lot more nuanced than I think we're like being fair to, because like the Cyberpunk one was not due to just, hey, we're building this train station of live service, whereas Destiny is in a more unique position. Like Fortnite adding BR was because yes, they saw the trend of BR, and then they also kind of prepared their whole game for it. I mean, the way Fortnite rocked the industry with like having a new skin in the shop every single week, like, is what made every single developer go to that season pass model. It was like right after that. Like, there were some games that were experimenting with it, but like that was like the big one. For Cyberpunk, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research on that one. It's a lot more like nuanced, and it's a lot more. It's a lot. There's a lot more of a unique situation there. But I feel like for Bungie, it's more like it just feels like they know what they kind of need to do to get people back. They just not I'm not saying that like everything is like black and white, but like they know what they kind of need to do to get the base that will rave about the game being great, and everybody will be back on the game. They know what they need to do. They have the cards to do it. I just feel like I need to see, as a fan and as just like a content creator for the game and all this, like I need to see like a level of consistency past the final shape for me to be like hyped and really like spearhead recommending the $500+ it would take to get into Destiny for somebody.
Right.
Because yeah, I don't know. I also feel like back in, I think it was 2019 is when I went like full time for the first time covering content.
Mhm.
And like I just remember being so excited for even things that I wasn't, that now if they were to come out, I don't think I'd be as excited about. And I think it's just because the game was at least trying new things and innovating new ideas, and they didn't always work, but at least you could see that level of effort being put in. Now it's like, at least this year and last year, and honestly Beyond Light too, but like kind of all like the past 3 years, but it's gotten more and more repetitive, and that franchise fatigue is real. But man, I really hate the every single week let's rally at the hollow projector, boys, like
Right.
and then end the story, and then just that's it, like go
Yeah.
go do something else until a week later. I really don't like that.
Yeah.
um
Agreed.
so yeah,
So
I hope
what
that
would
answered
they
the question.
I think that does a good job. So I guess along that similar topic, like we've had so many incredible games in 2023, like literally just in the last couple of months. I think it's probably the most like competitively.
This entire year
It's
been
insane.
bangers.
has been insane.
The competition
year's
for
been
Game of the
insane.
Year, there are games that will not win Game of the Year this year that could be Game of the Year pretty much every other year if they don't win. Like you have, I mean, just from titles off the top of the head, like Baldur's Gate, you had the DLC for Cyberpunk, you've got Remnant 2, you have Alan Wake, you've got Lies of P. I mean, like the list goes on. You have Zelda, like the whole. It's just crazy
Dude,
how
Lies
many
of P is
good
sick.
titles came out this year from developers like we've never even really heard of, some more notable than others. But like, what's one thing that you would like to see in those games, or like in a game that you've played recently? Because I know a lot of you have been venturing into much more variety content. What's something in other games that you would like to see brought to Destiny? Like if you could think of one feature, or whether it's like the new player experience or some really cool way that they unveil the story, or something of that nature. Evan, I'll start with you on this one.
I feel like one thing that I mean, I feel like just having more things that are, I guess, more arcadey, if that makes sense. Like one of the things that I really liked this year was Resident Evil 4's remake. I loved having to beat the game in a certain amount of time on the most difficult setting, fresh new playthrough, and at the very end of it, you get a cool reward. In that game, it's infinite ammo and everything. You get like cat ears. That was like such a hard, really cool achievement that only like the most hardcore Resident Evil speed optimization type of player could really get into. And
Right.
I mean, I don't know if it's like a one shoe fits all, or yeah, one shoe fits all. It's definitely not that easy of a question, but I feel like just more, I guess, less serious and less like self-obsessed story type of activities and modes, things that are just fun for just the player that wants to hop on and goof around. More
Mini games
arcadey type
within the
stuff.
content that already
Yeah,
exists.
or
type
even
thing.
taking things that already exist and just giving you a reason to be like, all right, this is a new variant of that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, just I guess generally challenge. Like a lot of the games that I played this year were pretty difficult, and they were really fun because of it.
Yeah.
Except Lords of the Fallen, that game.
Dude,
was
you're
kind
just
of
dog
BS
shit
half
at the
time.
games, bro.
Bro. I mean, dude, you hated Lords of the Fallen, man. I don't want to hear it. That
Yeah,
game is
because
sick.
I was blaming the game because
Bec-
and then I slept on it and then I was like, you just need to get good, bro. And then I got good.
Mano, how
World's beating
about
the Pantheon and Hollow Knight, by the way. Just throwing it out.
That's the only thing
Throwing
this
it
guy
out.
has,
Just
dude.
throwing it
Oh
That's
out.
the
my
only
God.
thing, bro. Should make a YouTube video on it.
I will, dude. Why not? You watch
Yeah,
me. I'll do it.
I'll
Yeah.
wait for.
Oh my god.
Mano, what about you? What's one thing you'd like
Okay.
to see from other games?
I just had a wild idea because I was thinking about Fortnite. All right. You know how the tower's sort of coming back when we go on the Traveler? It'd be really dope. Completely copium, by the way. I am huffing on it hard. Like my room is full of it right now.
Incredible.
I would love to see, like, I don't know if it'd be like a return, but there is nostalgia in the whole idea of like bringing back, like, what if we had like 4 maps from Destiny 1 and there were like missions from Destiny 1 that came back? Like we did like an OG Destiny 1 thing inside of Destiny 2. Now, instead of like a piecemeal, like we'll give you a map, we'll give you a map, we'll like, and it'll be like once every like year or something like that. If there was one cool thing, if we could go back, like have like a time portal, maybe we go inside the Traveler and it's a time portal. Again, hopium, copium, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Something that brings us back to a moment in time. Because I think that that would be a cool thing inside of Destiny to have. Again, I don't think they'll do it. It would be cool. They would probably take them another year to do it with their resources and their things like that, and with their teams being split working on multiple games. But I think that'd be a really cool thing that would draw the community back. Like, maybe do classic trials of some sort. I don't know how you do that, but some kind of like because that's what a lot of Destiny is, right? Like how many of you hopped on and did Grasp of Avarice and got your Gallarhorn, right? Inside of
Yeah,
Destiny
yeah.
2.
Like WoW Classic, like something like that. where
Yeah,
they're
like a
bringing it
WoW
all the way
Man,
back or something
Destiny
like that.
classic.
I
know,
don't
right?
I don't think it's incredibly far fetched. Like even if it was like one time
Age
a
of Triumph.
year or like random, just like those sporadic events. So one thing I think that I would argue against it is I think people are very sick of the Destiny 1 content coming back and that being
Right.
the like, solution.
I have major devil's advocate.
So
to add to this.
that's
Yeah,
kind of
I'm
like
just copium in it right now.
No, and I actually think you have some cool ideas there. Like randomly for the PvP community, just as a free update, they brought back Asylum
It
for
would need to be
one
free.
weekend, and they made it a free update that they did for the community just at a random time throughout the year to like, holy shit, Asylum's back for one weekend, or like, you know, they bring back 0 Hour for a week, or like whatever it might be, just to run them for fun. Nostalgia is a huge part of Destiny, right?
They can't have it be paid. That would be my biggest thing. Is like, if as a player, it cannot be paid. It has to be something free. Again, just thinking about a way to do it, that would be a cool thing to do, but it cannot be paid because there's been so much ways we've lost money on it, or not lost money, but spent money in this game. It has to be free.
And I think
I got a question for you though, Mano, because like, isn't that what Final Shape kind of is like retreading? Because like, dude, like, isn't that the whole Traveler thing is like retreading your old memories? That's like the whole
Well, that's
story.
what Evan, that's kind of what gave me the idea, because I was like, what did Fortnite do? Oh yeah, they went back to the OG map. Well, we're kind of doing that already.
Yeah,
Like, it'd be kind of a cool concept.
I mean, it's
WoW
Destiny
does that
1.5, right? Like, that's essentially where we're at right now.
That was kind of just my idea.
WoW, World of Warcraft has World of Warcraft, the normal one, and then they have WoW Classic, which it's like kind of weird that like, you know, they like announce like the next DLC for WoW Classic. They're on what I guess you would call for Destiny like Shadowkeep right now in World of Warcraft time.
Hey,
So,
Evan.
yeah, what's up?
Do you have a way to increase your audio slightly on your end?
Yes, I'm gonna blow out your eardrums. Hold on, I got you.
The only problem I see with it, and again, I know I've added a little bit of debate to it, because people are like, I know the developers want to make new content. They don't want to retread over, and that's fine. I think it was actually Sammy Katz put out a tweet, and someone who redid some of the stuff that came back in after the update, after Beyond Light, was actually talking about how devs don't want to work on old stuff anymore. They want to work on new stuff. And there's 100% truth to that.
Yeah.
So I completely can see developers being like, I don't want to work on that old stuff anymore. I'm sick of it. Let's
Am I
go.
too loud now? Am I good?
What about that, Chaz? Is
Or
that
am I
better?
literally the same?
That sounds better to
So-
me.
Regarding the I'm just gonna flip this here. I personally am so fucking sick of using nostalgia as like content. Like people just
Yeah.
live in the past. They're like, oh, Destiny 1 is so much better. No, it fucking wasn't. You're just living in the past and moments that you adored. Bring this back. Oh my god, I remember the
You want your
days, the
childhood
good
back.
days. Like I fucking hate that. And Bungie does that so much. And every time they come out with new shit, it's always amazing. And every time they bring stuff back, I just always kind of snarl at it a little bit. So
It's kind of like the industry
like
as a whole though right now. Like I feel like cuz have you guys played Modern Warfare 3 at all? Like
No.
Modern Warfare 3 has only original Modern Warfare 2 maps from
Oh, dude, I played the beta.
2009.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
And so like it just I kind of agree that like I feel like cuz if we want to go back to that question that you had earlier of what can they do to get you on the hook for the next era,
Yeah.
they need to truthfully treat the next era like the next era and
Yes.
spearhead a new generation of new ideas,
Yeah.
new concepts.
Yeah.
Because if I want to play the Destiny 1 moments, you know, and I love Destiny 1. I think I've talked my head off about how much I love Destiny 1 for the time. It's very nostalgic, probably one of the greatest single experiences that you can still play the whole thing start to finish. Fantastic game. But I can also bust out my Xbox One or my PlayStation and just
True.
go play that, you know?
True.
Right.
And like
Yeah.
and I don't disagree for business wise. It's probably so smart to get people on the hook for nostalgia. Nostalgia clearly sells. I mean, Bungie, Activision, Blizzard, they've proven that it sells very well. Fortnite is 44 million players because nostalgia sold so well. But I feel like to get to the main meat of the question, how can they get you on the hook? What is one thing that you would like to see them do that other games are doing? There's so many new games coming out with new ideas. Do
Yes,
new
that's true.
stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
What about you, Glenn?
Yeah, so two things for me. I'm a gameplay guy, right? So replayability with good gameplay is important, and Bungie has nailed the gameplay better than anybody else. Gunplay, I should say. Right?
Yes.
But like things like the first thing that comes to my mind is Remnant, which is one of my games of the year. The replayability on that game is absurd because of how they
Yeah.
have the adventures and the world laid out with procedural generation. You know, any roguelite that you play, it's that's what makes those games so good and engaging. And we've seen this in Destiny. We've seen this. Even Callous Raid, like that switched things up just enough to spice it up.
Yep.
The best example of this is probably Menagerie, you know? And we're not even going to talk about how great Menagerie's loot system was. Like we need more things like that that provide a lot of replayability
Yep.
in the
Rotating
game. The other
100%.
the other thing, I've had this idea for a while. If Destiny wants to be this big social game and they want to put the MMO in their tag, right? Why the fuck don't we have something that is like our own little spot, our own little home, our own
On the
little
ship?
apartment, like somewhere in the tower or just some separate instance that we can fly to, that we can go out and we can by ourselves grind as many materials as we want. I'm thinking survival game here, right?
Yep.
Survival MMO where you can go out and you can grind materials and you can upgrade and customize your own little spot and make yourself feel at home. Like people would spend so much time doing that. And they would feel good about the place that they live in Destiny's universe. And I think that's such a missed opportunity in this game.
Yeah.
That was something that they
Like that.
wanted to develop from Destiny 1. If you guys have ever
Really?
read Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, if you guys ever read that, it's the Jason Schreier book where they talk about the development of Destiny. One of the whole ideas was how do we become legend? You know, like they just keep saying that. The idea was so you can like make your own like hall or your own space, like where people could come in. I think like another game that does that well is Phantasy Star Online.
Mm.
That was one of the things that they wanted to do. They wanted to do that, but somewhere along the way it got lost. But it's a
Dude.
great book, but it details a lot of the issues and the stuff that happened in Destiny 1 and the development. That was one of the ideas Glad they wanted to do. I
Dude,
don't know
that'd
why
be
they don't do it.
amazing.
Yeah, that
Like
would be
if
sick.
Bungie released that, I would be on the game immediately, building out my own little apartment. Like
Yeah.
It would give a lot of depth to the reason to do things too. Like, hey,
Yeah.
do this thing, rock your thing, have it with like even the date of when you did it. I mean, that would be really impactful. I mean, like even on a very, very small scale, Pokemon does that. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
even
And
Pokemon does that. You can go into the underground and like have your whole base for the stuff that you've caught. And I mean,
And
survival
dude,
games do it best.
I'm not a Tarkov gamer, but they do it as well.
imagine like you go in from this point on whenever they release this, and every raid that you do, you literally get like a boss head trophy from the raid that you go back and you plant in your room, and only the people that have beat this raid have this trophy, and you can bring people in your instance and show off your room and how you set it up. Like that would just be such an amazing thing in the game, and I don't know why it's not in the game.
Yeah.
Personally.
Also, I just saw that I'm quiet again. I'm good now. I don't know why my mic just keeps fucking changing its mind.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah.
I think those are all great ideas. I think for me, like, I mean, I already talked about kind of like the layout of the way they did content in Forsaken. The Pale Heart seems like it's going to be a really cool destination, and I hope they do. I don't know, man. Like, for me, I feel like the open world is just such a missed opportunity in this game. Like, no world bosses, no world specific loot, no reason to go back to destinations, no, you know, destination specific loot that really matters. It seems like it's all pretty meh. I would love something of that nature to like make the environments feel alive, make the enemies not just like bots that stand there and don't shoot you. I understand that there needs to be like new player destinations.
Dude, Neo Muna Patrol, man.
See, honestly, and
they'll come get you.
And I actually think that destination's like oddly overtuned. I think there needs to be like a balance, but like I'm cool with like the Cosmodrome being the open world, you know, for new players. It's on level, it's super easy, no enemy density. But like, I just feel like there's no threat in the open world. It doesn't feel alive, and they spend so much time and resources on like these insane destinations and then don't use them for anything.
How many of you have been to like Reese Reborn, like outside of the campaign? Because it's a pretty cool area.
I don't even know what that is.
But you never go to it again. And you spend all this time in Europa, and like, why didn't we spend more time digging into the Clovis Bray facility? Like, all those resources and stuff were spent, and we never go there.
Oh yeah,
I
mean, and it goes
exactly
down way underground. Like, yeah, 100%. And like, think about how many resources were spent on the Throne World that just don't get used, and that environment's incredible. Like, that whole year of Witch Queen was supposed to be about Savathun, and then like, you know, we kill her in the campaign and then don't hear hardly anything from her again. All of a sudden it's like, all right, well, we did that. So anyways, and then you just move on. But the other thing I would say for me is I want to hear, and we talked about this a bit in the last panel, I do want some sort of information about like what's going on beyond the final shape, because right now I feel like there's so much uncertainty with the franchise. Dude, like on anything that
we don't even know what the release date is.
Like we know that the final we don't even know when the final shape's delayed to. We know that there's episodes that they were working on. Beyond that, like, we know it's the end of the Light and Dark saga, but like what happens after that? Like, do we get any teaser at all? Like, do you feel like
Dude, we get episodes, man. Didn't you see those?
Do you feel like this expansion, they need to at least like tease where we're going in the next kind of like chapter of Destiny, or is that something you would hope to see before the final shape in more of like a media side?
I would expect it before the final shape.
Yeah, I would have expected it already by now. I would have expected it during the showcase of the final shape. Like, hey, by the way, this is our plan afterwards, because again, if you want people on the hook and you want people to invest in the next whatever amount of years, you have to nail the conclusion to some degree. You're never going to keep everybody happy. That's impossible to make everybody happy, especially when everybody has different expectations for what it should be. But you have to do at least a good enough job that people are there, and then we need to see what's after. And I thought about that question a lot. And I always think of World of Warcraft, because that was like the thing that they modeled Destiny after. And I don't know if you guys saw the most recent BlizzCon. Did you guys tune into BlizzCon at all? You guys look at it?
Caught little bits, yeah.
Yeah. They brought back the original like guy who built the universe of World of Warcraft, and he kind of announced their version of like Beyond Light, Witch Queen, Lightfall, because they announced 3 expansions.
Oh wow!
All at once, and they still have their WoW Classic. But the main thing that they did for World of Warcraft, they had a decision once they hit their big like final moment, right? Their decision was, do we do smaller individual stories at like kind of episodes, that type of stuff. Like, can we do these smaller stories that are more focused on characters like Disney does with like Loki and, you know, Captain America and all this other stuff, right?
Right.
Can we do episodes like that? Or are we going to make it so the Witness was only a pawn in a bigger scheme where there's an even bigger baddie? And that's what Blizzard has done for the past 10 years afterwards.
Mhm.
So like now they're kind of saying, okay, we know that we did that and we did that too much. And so their next 3 are more like introspective type of stuff. But I mean, that's a big question. And I think the answer needs to be revealed sooner than later. We also need answers on when the actual date of this DLC is or what they're thinking.
I agree
Because
with
like
you. Yeah.
Jason Schreier says June, and Jason Schreier is pretty smart. I mean, he's broken so many great stories, but also Bungie doesn't even say a date. And then on their profile, they say it's February. So
Right.
like, when is this thing coming?
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is just them reorganizing everything. I think that it was such a schism in their business. And at the end of the day, it is a business. They have to make sure that their bosses sign up on what is okay
Yeah,
to
of
say.
course.
Their teams are scattered right now. Like with everything that went on and with the reports of the firings, like no one knew, like people didn't know who on their team was getting let go. They didn't even know people were getting let go. I know that's no excuse, but honestly, I don't think that they know.
Apparently,
I think that
there's
they're still
someone-
trying to come up with stuff.
Sorry to interrupt. They're saying, Chad is saying,
You're
a
good.
bunch of people are saying that they removed the date from the profile today. Apparently,
Oh, really?
yeah. So
So they don't so they don't know then when it's coming.
this is wild.
You guys didn't get the special streamer email from Deej?
No, I'm not in.
No,
a
I'm
streamer
only
server,
I'm signed
unfortunately.
up for the diamond package. You must have got the platinum
The
package.
platinum plus.
Damn,
Yeah,
I'll forward it.
I think
Oh, thanks.
you guys make a bunch of really good points, and it kind of leads me to this.
It says I have to beat Liza P to get the email.
You do actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Dang.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and again, we touched on a little bit in the previous panel, but with all of this and like your like potential interest in the game, like a lot of it depends on loot, it depends on power fantasy, you know, power creep, balance, like all of those things. Like when we're getting into the nitty gritty of like what makes the game great at the end of the day, and like my question to you is, do you feel like Destiny needs a fresh start after the Light and Dark saga? Whether it be like just kind of like a natural break in the Destiny story and it's time to move on to like the post Light Dark stuff, or like potentially a D3. Glad, I'll start with you this time.
Okay, so I definitely have some hot takes here.
Okay.
Number one is, how do I say this without like offending a bunch of people?
You just gotta say it.
Do it. Rip the band-aid off,
If-
lad.
Yeah, if Bungie just straight up like the final shape and then they were like, hey, we're done with Destiny, we're ready to move on to our next thing, like I would be kind of okay with that in a way.
Wow.
And
I was not expecting you to go that route.
yeah, and I would almost feel like, you know, as long as Final Shape's a banger, I felt like I got everything out of it. You know what I mean? And there would almost be like from a streamer point of view, there would almost be a big sense of relief with everything. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird area where my brain goes. But at the same time, you know, they'd have to kill it with Final Shape to even have that happen.
Yeah.
But if they are going to continue Destiny, way back when I went to a summit, right? They basically pulled the whole room and they said if we were going to announce at E3 a Destiny 3 or a Destiny 2, and a lot of people were just like, Destiny 3 would just be way more exciting, because at this point, Destiny 2, with the whole franchise fatigue and everything that it's been through, it does have like a sort of a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth.
100%.
Not even just like regular people from the community, but people that had tried the game, you know, streamer, non-streamer, that they'll just never come back because it's Destiny 2. And they're like, haha, people still play Destiny 2. You know, we've all seen the memes.
Right.
But if you launch a brand new title in the Destiny universe, that is definitely the way to go if you're going to continue it that way.
Yeah.
So
I just wonder like what the realistic side of that looks like, because I know they've confirmed that Destiny is not done post final
For sure.
shape. We obviously don't know anything about that. They have episodes that I'm sure they're already developing, but like I get what you're saying though to an extent. Like what if it was, you know, very similar gunplay and things, but it was called something else and was a totally new game with new story, loot reset.
And it has to be
You know?
different. It can't just be like just copy paste everything over. Like if
Sure.
it's just the same things with the same weapons, with the same subclasses, with the same layout, with the same UI.
Of course.
Like it's just you're like, what do you?
Yeah.
Why? Like
it's such a
that's,
tough road to go down, honestly.
That's why I said the
yeah.
first thing with like if they were just done. I just want to see, like, we know Bungie can make a great game. I just want to see what Bungie's ready for next. Like I want to see their next best thing. And if it's more stuff in the Destiny universe, sure, but show me what's different, what's new. I don't just want the same Destiny 2 to continue. That's just continuing the whole franchise fatigue.
I mean, unfortunately, I think right now, like if that's the way that they're gonna go, I think that goes to Marathon. And based on a lot of things I've heard, and obviously I've not tried it, so I can't judge or anything of that nature, but they had a bunch of Tarkov streamers that apparently did not review the product well. And I don't, like, personally, for me, like, I don't have a huge interest in the genre of like that, you know, loot scarcity, like extraction type shooter where like you could lose all
The
your
Destiny
shit.
community as a whole is not going to carry over to that genre. That's a very
I
it's a
think
very
that's
interesting,
so niche.
almost
Yeah.
it's almost like an
Yeah, but-
untouched genre. Like because
Yep.
there's really not heavy competition, so it's smart on them to get into it. But a lot of the Destiny community is not going to like that.
I mean, dude, the way I put it is that it's an easy like question to answer, but really we don't know until we see things. I don't buy that a bunch of people played Marathon and didn't like it. That like I saw the video and then I saw like a bunch of extra people from Tarkov that said that this just didn't happen the way that like it was portrayed. So like I just don't even know if that's true fully. The other
know
thing
that-
that I would
That's totally
definitely
fair, yeah.
say, when it comes to the genres that Bungie can get into, Bungie is, I mean, if we want to go back to just the business side, you can look at the trends of where people are. There's a giant hole in extraction shooters that everybody has kind of tried to dip their toes into. Most recently would be like Call of Duty, and it was really bad. The DMZ stuff was just but like Tarkov is very slow and it's very focused on realism. So if I showed a room full of Tarkov fans a game that is more fast-paced and a little bit more casual version
Potentially abilities,
playful
different color
of
schemes, sure.
of like Tarkov, of course they're not gonna like it. Like I just feel like it's not a great pool, but also Bungie has a big opportunity to fill that with that vision, because I do see that vision. I mean, I can imagine a world where all those things that we just said. We want the world to be more rich and more lifelike when you're just running around. I could imagine a world where you're doing sort of pseudo raid mechanics that you would find in something like Destiny, where they've kind of mastered the first person raid mechanic. I could see that playing out in an open world like Tarkov, and then you bring home that great loot, and maybe they have something incentivized for you to keep being there. I could totally see that, because
Sure.
I mean, look at Valorant. They saw CS:GO and they saw Overwatch, and they said, "Hey, let's bring League of Legends
fresh
like
spin on
art
it.
style
Yeah.
and gameplay, and let's put a fresh spin on this thing." I mean, that's
Yeah.
what the best industry leaders do, is they move into those little holes and they make something great.
And I actually think there's room for them to do that too. Like, I'm not a Tarkov player for those reasons. I think it's very slow. It's so
Yeah.
hyper realistic. But I mean, if the movement and gunplay feel good, I'm willing to try anything. I think their main challenge there is like, and it also sounds like they have some really cool like PvE things planned. Like if they incorporate like raids or dungeons or team-based things like in that extraction world environment, I actually think they could seriously like innovate on that otherwise like kind of samey genre right now, which is just like you go in, you extract loot, you come back, and then they do a seasonal reset at the end of the season type thing. We also just had a poll that concluded with chat where 81% said they want a completely fresh start, so like all their loot gone. That's
So
pretty
like,
wild.
quick follow-up question. Kind of going back to the first thing that I said. How many people out of that, if it's Bungie, because I know, with everything that's been going on with Bungie lately, I know emotions are pretty high, but let's be real. Bungie excites us when they come out with a game. If
Yep.
Bungie were to do a completely fresh start, what if it was a new game, but it wasn't, and maybe it could even be in the Destiny universe, maybe, but it wasn't necessarily like
It drops the
Destiny.
name Destiny.
Yeah, would you still be equally as excited as long as it's a fresh Bungie start? Which is kind of the point that I was getting to before. Like if Bungie concluded Destiny and said no more Destiny, but we got some cool shit, I would be equally as excited because it's Bungie.
I think it really comes down to how they market, and it's what we were talking about with the previous question. Is like, when do we get communication on post final shape? Like if they came out and were like, it's gonna be like in the Destiny type universe, but it's not gonna be called Destiny.
You're not going to be playing as a Titan Warlock. Like it's going to be different. It's going to be a spin-off.
It's kind of like in the same world, but a different spin on like the same, like, kind of the same thing, but innovating on what we've done. Like they would need to communicate that very early on, because I feel like right now, like people just have no idea what to expect. And I think it's like a really difficult place to be in as like a Destiny content creator and just someone like that's a fan of the series. Like I have no faith or anything like right now post final shape because we know nothing about it. I think they'll deliver a banger DLC. Like maybe that's a hot take. I think like when their backs against the wall, that's when they perform the best. And I don't know why it seems like it has to get to that point for them to really like go and just knock something out of the park and like truly over deliver. But that does seem to be when they like perform their best in terms of, giving the community what they've actually been asking for. So
yeah, it's all the back against the wall stuff usually, huh?
Well, it goes back to that thing is like adversity is opportunity. I'm gonna go a sports reference here. Minnesota Vikings. I'm a huge Vikings fan, even though they haven't been great, but they were terrible at the start of this season because like it was basically just one play: throw to Justin Jefferson, throw to Justin Jefferson. Okay, that didn't work. Justin Jefferson went out. As soon as that happened, and that one strength was gone, that's when they started reiterating and changing things. When that one thing stopped working, that's when they're like, okay, cool, we're going to do. And now you see them actually coming up with new creative ideas because they're forced to, not because it doesn't work or not because, how do I say this? Not because the old thing wasn't working so great, but because you remove that one thing and now you have a brand new loop to top into.
Yep.
I'd love to see Earth in 1,000 years do a huge time jump. Maybe Zavala's still around, but there's all these different things, and now we don't have Titans, Hunters, Warlocks. Let's just do a massive jump, and now there's this new threat, and it's completely like you can keep some of the same shooting mechanics, but everything is different.
Yeah,
the weapons
sick.
are gone. Like
Cool.
I think Goth posted on this on Twitter too. And I said, like, if you guys have ever watched Battlestar Galactica, I'm such a nerd, but whatever. Like, when they went from like season 2 to season 3, there was like a year-long time jump, and it completely changed the entire series. And instead of it just being a linear thing, they just time jumped instantly, and it refreshed the entire series.
Yeah.
And it made it work for like another 2 years. I would love to see that. And I like that whole maybe new gameplay loop. Maybe there's a new way you play inside the Destiny universe. I think that's a great idea, Glad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just my biggest fear, I know I keep saying franchise fatigue, but I feel strongly about it, is my biggest fear is that you just keep continuing the same shit and we just keep going down the same road. And I would really like to see what Bungie can do if they just cut it off and gave us something fresh.
Yeah,
There's
sorry, go ahead, Mano.
Okay, I'll go. So one of the other things in that book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, that Jason Schreier wrote, one of the reasons why Destiny got made is one of the developers. I don't have my iPad with me that has the copy of the book. The reason it got made is because there was someone who was sick of making Halo. Like he was just sick of it. I'm like, I don't need to redesign another Warthog skin or like another armor piece. I'm sick of it. So they're like, okay, go do something and go do something in a corner somewhere and try to figure out, reiterate on something new. And that's when he came up with this idea of like the Dark Ages, like kind of classes of Titans, like the things that became the Titans and the Warlocks That all
Wow.
started from like we're gonna have like a Middle Ages game, but then they informed it was sci-fi. But it all started from that point. Is like maybe the developers are just sick of making Destiny.
How
Yeah.
many
Right?
years? How many years did Bungie work on Halo?
Yeah,
A long time.
How many?
I think 15.
2001 to 2000.
Well, that's when it launched, but I
Sure.
know
So
that
it'd
they
be
were
like,
working like
so probably
97, 98.
yeah,
'Cause
probably around the amount of time that they've worked on Destiny at this
it was
point.
originally
Yeah.
supposed to come out for Mac, but then Xbox bought them. And so that was the whole thing is like they were making Mac games. Then that's one of the like the original Marathon was like a Doom killer. And so the idea is like they were making all the Mac versions of the games while
Okay.
PC
So,
stuff was still going on, but a long time.
So are we? So are we roughly approaching that same time frame with Destiny?
Yeah, and this is what I was gonna say is that is according to I don't know if it was Jason Schreier or somebody else, but that's apparently the reason the rumor that's been circulating is that all the people that when they finished up Forsaken had that exact same mindset. They were like, okay, we did this thing, now it's time to go make something new. Like all the people that
AKA Marathon.
spearheaded
Yep.
the Forsaken, and that's why Marathon is what it is. And that's why, even though a lot of people who are Destiny fans, and understandably, because Destiny is what you love, and it's what I've loved for a long time, but I think it's fair to say that this is exactly, if you're excited for a new game and you want Bungie to do this new thing, and glad in your vision of like a new thing that's kind of like it, but it's not. This is that. Marathon is
I
that. And I
mean,
don't know why people
dude.
aren't rooting for it. I've been rooting for the success of that game since day one.
It's
I
tough
want to
because
see it be the best.
people have just a deep passion for the Destiny universe. They always have the stories, and I get that. I get that. But I don't think people shooting it down before it even you get a chance to play. It's just
Yeah,
wild to me.
we've
just
seen
an
a trailer
interesting-
that looked pretty sick, and we didn't even see gameplay yet.
Chat is saying so Halo was worked on from roughly 97 or 99 to about the 2010
Yeah. So
era.
let's literally call it around 10 years. So
Yeah.
so it's interesting because we had 10 plus years of Halo, and then it swapped over to Destiny, both widely successful franchises. Now we've come in 10 plus years of Destiny. It's an interesting thing to think about, man.
Yeah.
They could just keep talking about Destiny's not over just to keep people on the hook.
True.
And then boom, hey, hit the
Yep.
brakes a little bit here. Here's really what we're doing, because Bungie is a master at keeping people by the balls.
Yeah. I think
And as much as you might hate that, they're brilliant with it.
I mean, that's why their business works so well with it, man.
Yeah,
That's why.
I hate
that's-
it, but they're geniuses, because you know what I'm doing? Every single fucking Destiny season, I'm buying it and I'm playing it.
Yep.
Yep.
And there's
that's why
nothing that's going to change that. And they could do that with anything, and I will just continue to buy it and play it. I don't know why. I swear they have somebody in there that's like a mind scientist.
Yeah, they have people that go to college literally for
Yeah.
the
Oh,
degree of
100%.
getting you to like
you
people's
hooked.
whole job is to
Yeah.
look at the psychology of a live service game
Absolutely,
and
dude.
keep you on the hook.
And I think
Yeah.
there's probably a bunch of people who think this is like a super like unfeasible route that the Destiny franchise or like Bungie could go down. But I mean, when you think about it, did anybody think the Halo franchise was gonna just end or like be transferred over to a different studio when they
Yeah.
were done working on it?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that was a
Someone could buy
highly
the rights to
popular
it.
franchise. I mean,
No,
like,
no. I mean,
They kept the resources. That's the thing
People-
is they kept the ownership of it too.
yeah.
people expected it to happen though because of the way that they went out with Microsoft with it was not pretty at the time, and then also they moved all the people that wanted to continue to work on Halo to a company called 343, and that's why 343 has made it since Halo 4. But Reach was always their like final thing. They had announced that for a long time before that.
Part of it is they wanted to own their own thing. That's what it all came down to. And it's
Yeah.
funny because the only reason here, I didn't even know this until I did some research because I'm working on a video for this. I didn't even realize why they worked with Xbox to get purchased from Xbox. It's because there was a glitch in a game in Oni, I think it was, that would like delete people's hard drives or do something goofy, so they lost
Oh,
a
wow.
ton of money. I don't know all the little intricacies of it, but that was one of the reasons why they approached Xbox. It originally wasn't supposed to happen. It was just supposed to be this, and then they started talking. They're like, "Dude, we need money." That's one of the reasons why I'm kind of hopeful. They always seem to do better sometimes when someone is holding their hand. Like, I'm gonna say this: a lot of people were cheering for the Activision separation to happen, but
Nah,
think about what happened with Activision. Like, some of those things were actually pretty good. Like,
They had the
Forsaken
resources
happened.
to bring in the
Some
extra
of them?
studios.
Everything with Vicarious Visions and Activision was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I miss
It was,
I
it was
miss High
literally
Moon.
peak.
Yeah.
It was peak Destiny, bro.
Yeah, it
I'm
was.
not afraid to say that. When Destiny was with Activision and Vicarious Visions, it was peak content. We were getting so much stuff all the time.
They had the
Oh, yeah.
resources
Endgame
to
difficult.
do it. I mean,
I
Yeah, I don't.
know,
I don't
that's
think
real.
it was like. I don't think it should be seen as like a really like unpopular opinion to say that we just got more and we got higher quality of more stuff when there was
Dude,
three studios and infinite money. Yeah,
we
like
were getting
that's
raids
like, you know,
every season.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
no,
I want
and I mean
to
like
rein us in a little bit, to be honest, because I don't think we're gonna be able to go down.
no,
that
no, no,
road.
and the only thing I wanted to say on that real quick is not even to do with Destiny. It's again with the way that, because I watched the newest BlizzCon. It's the way with like World of Warcraft right now, right?
Yeah.
So like they just split away from like even though Blizzard is now kind of its own independent thing, and they're saying the things that kind of Bungie was saying when they split free of Activision.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for the best for World of Warcraft, but I'm seeing a lot of the same like, you know, that like rally cry, and I
Right.
really hope that their story ends with everybody being like, hell yeah, we finally get the Blizzard back that we've been wanting since like 2007 or 2008 or whatever, you know. I hope that one goes that way. Destiny is a very different, even though it's a very similar type of vision that they have, it's a very different game with like very different goals. But I mean, I also don't think it's uncommon. I think it's common sense to say that, yeah, we got more when Activision was there. And now that we have Sony and we have this new era that can potentially take hold, all it's going to take is somebody who in upper management or leadership or whoever to really, really beacon in and just say, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. You either like it or you don't like it, but we're going to try to make it the best we possibly can. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not,
You know,
yeah.
I think that's
one thing that
whoops.
Travis said on the last word, Ty Guy Travis from IGN on
Mhm.
that last thing. I think that what Destiny needs is invariably tied to what Bungie wants, because Bungie wants to become a multi-game studio, right? So there was this theory that some of the people in the publications are kind of theorizing, is that it would basically be like 1 year potentially is Marathon, another year is Destiny, whatever the next iteration of Destiny is.
Yeah.
So that's really what it needs. Is it needs some kind of a new direction. And the real question is what resources will Bungie allocate to those things? Because originally, you know, Bungie was like a couple of people and like this weird old dingy building. It's not that anymore. It's like a full-fledged business.
Over 1,000
So it really,
employees, I believe. From
yeah. So it
recent
really
estimates.
depends on what Bungie Studios wants to do. Do they want to keep the monetization of Destiny 2? Because if that's the case, people are going to start hopping off the train and maybe go to Marathon. But this is the other cool thing about Marathon that Travis told me about. He talked to Christopher Barrett about this, and he was just talking about like, you know, what are you trying to do? Are you trying this is where Glad might be interested, because I had no idea about this. And he just said, you know, are you guys looking to bring like secrets or do something back? Yes, this game is more about secrets and more community building stuff. They said that about Marathon, and I'm like, wait, what?
And I
I thought
think
this was just a PvP game.
that audience still exists, and that's kind of what I was talking about.
Right.
Is like they were talking about doing, you know, the world's first team to extract or complete a raid in Marathon. You know, they then go into the next sector and they have to unlock it for the community. Like things like that I think are really cool. It creates a spectacle, and that I do see a bit of crossover. I guess like kind of circling things back a little bit, assuming that Destiny continues to live on, the franchise itself. One thing we touched on earlier was like there's all this change of tone from the studio, and I think a lot of it has to do with what you guys were talking about, how like they were owned by Activision, then they were independent, now they're owned by Sony again, and naturally like the internal leadership's going to change, and their priorities of like, do we focus on the hardcore? Do we focus on the casual? Are we trying to strike a balance with both? I feel like Destiny over the years has kind of lost a little bit of like their own sense of direction and where they want to take the game, which is, again, to Glad's point, like a natural thing that happens when you have something that's been established and running for as long as it has. Like, people like to compare the sentiment of like, oh, you know, we're making this the hardcore game. You have to realize like some of those statements were made like 5+ years ago, which in the gaming industry is like an eternity. I mean, at this point, Destiny 2 has been out for what, almost, what is it, like 6-7 years at this point, compared to D1, which was like 3, I think, something like that.
Yeah, D1 was 3 years.
We're approaching the 10th year of the franchise. Like, that narrative's going to change. Their ownership has changed hands. And I think like assuming Destiny is going to stay around and remain relevant, like in that context of a fresh start, do you think we need like a loot reset, a power reset, like take us back down to like 0 or 100 power, take us down to like, you know, we essentially, like all the weapons that we've collected up to this point, we get to the conclusion of the final shape and we have a fresh start in that sense of the word, much less like, you know, a whole new game. Do you think that would be healthy for Destiny? Would that incentivize you to play more? Or do you feel like there's bigger changes that need to be made?
You're gonna split the audience with that one.
Yeah.
You're gonna have your casual. Most of the community is probably gonna hate that, but your people that want to grind are gonna love it. You're gonna split the audience there.
Yeah.
You're gonna straight divide it down the middle for sure.
I feel like I would understand that with the sunsetting thing, with especially how it went last time. I actually think it was the right move for the game. I think it was just done like completely the wrong way with bringing back weapons that had already been sunset and sprinkling them in and just not having enough loot to fill the gaps of what left. I think like just really left a sour taste in like everybody's mouths. And I almost wonder, like, even if they were like, we're taking a firm stance and we're re-implementing sunsetting, I still feel like the community would be super salty with it. So I'm wondering if like, if there's a natural place in you know, the story comes to an end and they kind of conclude it that way, that's their break from everything that we've earned in the game. Because to me, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, it just feels like the loot is so uninteresting. And we talked about this in the previous podcast. Like, to me personally, we have so many weapons with the same perks. We have weapon crafting for guaranteed god rolls on everything, and it feels like it's just become a checklist looter shooter more or less, rather than like that spark that made Destiny special, where like you had to actually go and grind for shit. And I don't know what they do to strike the right balance, but it just feels like it's so it's off right now, and I feel like maybe a fresh start would help with that. So I'd be curious to get your guys' thoughts in that regard.
I think the biggest thing that's happened since, you know, all the different changes is that, you know, directionally we've kind of fallen in, actually not even kind of, we've fully fallen into just builds taking hold of everything, and that's fun. Like, I love the build crafting side of it, but the problem is that every single build craft, really, when you boil it down to it, for the most part, most builds are
100 resil.
Shoot something, 100 resil, blow up an entire room of solar void arc, and it's just blow up an entire room with like one ability. Go punch something, blow everything up. Yeah. And like, it's cool to see like something come to fruition, but to go to your point about gunplay and about where that is, I mean, dude, I just remember activities constantly beckoning me to have a gun first, and my abilities to complement that gunplay. Yeah. Everything feels very streamlined with that. And to go off of sunsetting, because I've been like working on a piece for sunsetting for a minute now. Sunsetting, the biggest thing that would have helped it back then is what we have now, which is crafting. Crafting would have helped sunsetting back then, because it would have made more sense back then, because then you could just go and craft something and have new stuff to craft every single year, and it'd be a lot healthier. Problem is, and it's always been the problem with the way that Bungie goes about their stuff. I mean, this goes all the way back to even like what people consider like the golden age, right? Like it even goes back to the days of like Niobe Labs and all this other stuff. When the pressure is on and there's a vision that does work, if people could just give it a little bit more time,
Yeah.
everybody's very, very quick to just be like, pitchforks, no, let's change this now. And then that idea that had you looked back on it in a year would have panned out well does not pan out. Because, for example, crafting would have helped sunsetting to some degree. You would have been able to have the weapons that you could get, god rolls, and then, oh, weapons are gone, new weapons come in, new god rolls to acquire, and then craft. Would have made more sense there. Niobe Labs, for example, right? The pressure is on. We're gonna open up the Niobe Labs early because the pressure is on. It's like, dude, if these ideas just got more time to play out, or if they were executed better to begin with and the vision was a lot clearer, it's not so black and white. But if these things were to just pan out and play out the way that they could have,
Yeah.
then you wouldn't be in these situations where there's like roadblocks and then people aren't sure what the decision is, and then we make all these assumptions and all this other stuff,
As
It's
poorly executed as sunsetting
Yeah.
was, I almost feel like they hindered the franchise so much more by backtracking on it. And
I agree.
I think
I
a lot of
agree.
people fail to realize that like backtracking has led to old weapons being introduced multiple times, whether it's changing the actual perk pool itself or adding the what do you call it, like the faction specific perks and things of that nature. And it now we're just using the same guns for years on end, and that to me gets really boring because one, I think red border weapon pursuit is just to me that's a chore. It's not exciting to unlock a guaranteed god roll 5 out of 5 by just running a mission 5 times and okay, now I have it. But also like the new weapons have to be so strong to compete with what's already in the sandbox, or like so innovative in terms of like new perks that they come up with. To Evan's point, I think abilities severely undermine like the value of loot, like in a world where like Banner of War is a thing this season. It's just like, dude, you can just remain unkillable and use strictly abilities and just literally demolish entire rooms. You have, and I, to an extent, like I think the subclass verbs are cool. Like I love Jolt, and I think like all of those things are awesome. I feel like it needs to be toned back a substantial amount, which I know a huge portion of the community will disagree with because they're in it for the power fantasy. But like I feel like you can have a power fantasy without it just completely, I guess, devaluing loot in the game and like the weapons that you use. Like right now I feel like builds have become the primary source of ad clear and like what you use in like ad clear situations, and your weapons are kind of just there to do damage to a boss whenever you get to it. And that's kind of what it's boiled down to. Like I rarely find myself just shooting a primary for ad clear when I can just throw a grenade, throw a rift, and all of a sudden I have like half of my grenade back in 5 seconds and half the room's gone from a single grenade. So I don't know. It's a weird,
there's like
delicate
this
balance.
all just like boils down to that there's just so many things that kind of feel like they need to happen, and there's not enough time to make those things happen without a significant delay to the final shape.
Yeah.
That I don't even know, dude. Like I'm just like, I've thought about it and I've gone in circles. I'm like, that is not
And you can't
as
really
clear as like the Forsaken thing where it was like, all right, random rolls are back. All right, this is back. All right, more content here,
Yeah.
It's not that easy anymore. Now this is like, I mean, you almost just kind of have to go in the new direction of, all right, here's the finale. Gonna do the best we can with what we have to work with, and then marathon. And
like
that's
a
kind
lot of those
what I
things,
expect.
if you backtrack on them, you're just gonna piss off the community even more. Like
Yeah,
then it's almost
you can't
worth doing.
keep backtracking. Yeah.
So yeah. Any other thoughts, lads, on that specific?
Bro, Mano just fell down.
I don't know why, but like my thing just shrunk real quick. I was like, I'm out of here. I have a hot take.
Okay.
If you guys want to hear it.
Bro, Mano's flying around the
Let me
Flying
hear it,
around
dude.
the
You're already
thing.
flying
Yeah.
around. That's good.
I think that first of all, I think that people who got mad about sunsetting and also the pushback against people who want to see a Destiny 3 or a new box product, I think they're reflexively having they're having a fundamental misunderstanding of what happened in the past, which is informing their opinions now. Here's what I mean by that. So many people, when we came from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, the original campaign from Destiny 2 was a banger. I'm going to say that again because I don't think that everyone understands that. Versus the campaigns that we had in the past, the campaign of Vanilla Destiny 2 was great. It was fantastic. The problem, and this is what everybody remembers, is that there was no endgame. All the lessons that Bungie learned from Destiny 1 were not brought forward. So the question is, do we need a fresh start? Yes, but you have to take the lessons that you had learned in the past and bring it forward. You can't just be like, okay, there's a new raid, there's one weird trials, and there's like one new patrol zone, and that's it in the new game. You have to be like, there's grandmasters in the game right away, or you need a brand new fresh loop, or we have brand new powers with everyone else. And it was the same thing with sunsetting, because I want to say one of the things that I heard was the reason they did sunsetting it Beyond Light was because that's when Destiny 3 was supposed to come out. That's when Activision had signed the deal. It was supposed to be a couple of expansions, which it was like Vanilla Destiny 1, or excuse me, Vanilla Destiny 2, Forsaken, Shadowkeep, Destiny 3, which would have been the Beyond Light story, and then it would have been these expansions, and then that's the 10-year saga. And so the reason, along with like, Mountaintop and all the other pinnacle weapons coming out, was to do that sort of reset, is to do a new box product. And I think that because you didn't give us all this stuff, like a new patrol, like not just a new patrol zone, but like a completely new game, you could rest on your laurels. Like you could go back and use all these weapons. I think that they just need to say, cut the cord. Anyone who's like saying Destiny 3 is not the right idea, or a brand new Destiny 3, if you're going to go that direction, if you choose that direction, you have to learn the lessons of, you can't bring the old guns back. Maybe you call something, maybe you have like one or two weapons that are cool, but you can't just give us Suros Regime for the 5th time. You can't just give us Galahorn for the 3rd time. It has to be something completely brand new. So if they decide to do that, they have to, and it has to be more, it has to be better than what we have in Destiny 2 currently. That would be my main thing, is like that, because that was one of the negative things about Destiny 2, is that Trials wasn't great, PvP was slow, and abilities were
Features
slow.
just didn't exist in D2 that were in D1.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. What about
so all those lessons that they learned have to come forward, and whatever they do, they have to take those lessons and iterate on them with something different.
For sure. Glad, if we were to stay in this universe, I guess, like, do you want a fresh start, or do you like, what do you think
personally? Fuck yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind is low man's, like back in the day, that's literally how I grew my entire channel. Because low man's back in the day used to be so much more about like executing things and basically skill and movement and shooting, and it was just like so much more fun to watch. Now so many low mans these days are just abusing super broken builds, and I always wanted builds in Destiny, but it's funny because now I'm at a point where I almost don't like them. Like, it's day one raid prep or like challenge prep or low man prep is just all okay. What is just broken? What's the thing that's just absolutely busted? And it just takes away. It's essentially decreasing the skill gap, lowering the skill ceiling, and it goes once again back to what is just easiest for the most average player. So maybe an unpopular opinion. And then you have all these legendary guns now. Legendaries used to be, remember how excited you got for a legendary engram in Destiny 1? Everything just drops like hotcakes now. You get these guns that are mediocre, that don't really mean anything. The only time that we see the creativity that Bungie has a fuck ton of is in exotics, but now they're all tied to just giveaways and quests and literally handouts at this point. And they're cool, but they have essentially feel like the legendaries now. So we just need like a whole just complete wipe as far as I'm concerned, because it's just gotten out of control and to the point where it cannot be stopped unless things are just removed or deleted.
Yeah, I mean,
something that I thought Diablo 4 did really cool, sorry, just to hop in, was aren't there like special like weapons or like class items, like they're like a step above exotic? I only played a little bit of Diablo.
They're like extremely rare. The ones that were like what 4 weapons total per season that
Sorry,
people
didn't
could get.
I just thought that that was a cool idea because I think Glad's right on the money. We do need a wipe, but it would be cool to have like the exotic, like the things that if you really want to make a build, like
Overload
to have a build
uniques,
be
things like
that
that.
strong, you have to have that one thing, and it has to be super rare.
I think, and I don't feel like the Destiny community would be necessarily against that. Like, if you're getting exotics that are now like farmable through lost sectors, pretty much guaranteed on rotation as long as you do like the Neomuna, Vex incursion, like those sorts of things. Like, there's so many guaranteed sources for every form of loot in the game. Like, add a couple carrots to chase that are just super rare that encourage you to just play continuously. I also want to pose the question to Glad specifically because he mentioned it, but like, were 3.0 subclasses a mistake in some ways? Because like personally to me, like I think they did a great job revamping them. I think they're much more dynamic and fun. I feel like for me though, we're so like just beyond powerful.
It's almost
and
like, what's the phrase?
It's ability spam, and then on top of it, like
It's hindsight.
What is it? It's like a
Yeah.
catch-22. Like, it's so much fun to play with. We love it, right? But is it healthy for the game? Absolutely not. It's just not healthy for the way that the game's set up. Because if you need these extremely broken, busted ass like builds to even function in the game, then that, you know, that's the whole power creep situation. That's where things are just getting way too strong
I think
and
they're
way too out of control.
Yeah, I think they're really fun to play with, but like, God, it might.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a point where it's like, dude, I mean, maybe we do need to tone them back a little bit, which I know the community would hate that. Like, I mean,
But you're not going to be able
See,
to
like-
do that
and-
unless the whole community is just going to cry nerf. Like, your only option
100%.
is
See,
to
like,
just wipe the slate.
The problem that I see with that in regards to like future stuff is no matter what, all the new exotics that they've been making have kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them have been to basically enhance an ability of something else, like igniting or jolting or all these different things. And I think it's just because they've hit a wall with what they actually feel like they can creatively do with exotics that make them feel fresh and make them feel innovative. And one thing that I miss a lot about the pre 3.0 supers was having to experiment with different exotics and really figuring out, okay, this tree of this thing works really well with this exotic, and kind of having to pseudo buildcraft before it was fully like, all right, let me just run into a room with a banner of war and just walk around. And I don't know, I'm on a GM, but am I really on a GM? And I
Sure doesn't
really
feel
I
like it.
miss
Yeah.
I miss things that really rewarded you for exploring the build, and I felt like that really played off of what the franchise built on, which was that idea of like, hey, there's this thing and it's kind of mysterious, so why don't you experiment with it and really figure out the max possibility of using said thing. And it's not that it's like a problem that it's entry level. I don't think it's a problem that it's entry level. It's more that it's broken to the point where I just feel like as a player, you sit there and you go, all right, I'm going to use the same thing I've been using for 2 years now. And it's not even just a balance thing. It's just better
I mean,
to do this thing.
To add on to that as well, I think like one thing that I think gets confused is like I think the 3.0 update was amazing in terms of like the descriptions they give of the different abilities, like the synergy of the classes. I think what it did was like it prioritized abilities, and instead of using them situationally, which I think was more so the case in Destiny 1 and Vanilla D2. And I think there's a way to swing too far back towards like the we feel super weak thing, so they need to find the right balance, but it just feels like it's become so ability spam heavy, while at the same time I think the Armor 3.0 update they did took away so much build variety when they got rid of like Warmind cells, Charge with Light, Elemental Wells, like all of those different mod ecosystems that they used to use, and some of them were broken as hell, and I understand that. But also like they got rid of armor affinities. Now we have the armor charges that like you can just have a damage bonus of 22% like all the fucking time for doing literally nothing pretty much. I think it's dumbed down build crafting so much that I think part of it is like the subclasses are so strong and the build crafting so simplified. Both of those together feel kind of bad in the current state, and I don't really know how you fix that without upsetting just like a huge portion of the community. So, yeah, I think
at this point, I feel like it for at least for next year, that's just not gonna happen. Like they can't undo that because they built, I mean, rooms full of like hundreds of enemies that if you were to just rip people's power and resistance away, imagine good luck going into some of these places at that point, because it would just be a mess.
Yeah, and I think the other part that I know, I don't think Glad's a huge fan of it from what I've heard, is I think players want this crazy power fantasy, but they don't realize that when we're this strong, the only way Bungie challenges you is by making shit artificially difficult that is not actually fun to play against, which players complain about all the time. Like, you can't have it both ways. Like, you can't have insanely strong builds and then not expect it to be challenged. But now we're being put in situations where we're under leveled in like every single endgame activity. We're being spammed with champions. And I noted this on the previous panel, but it's like, you know, obviously they don't have the resources to go and create new mechanics and layer them on top of the base raids. They've stated that before with like the master content, but God, does it feel bad to just have like champions thrown at you in volume and call that like the enhanced difficulty with other modifiers thrown on top of it? Like, I don't find super levels of enjoyment with that, but I think a lot of that comes down to not sunsetting loot. So now our loot's insanely strong, and 3.0 subclasses were stronger than we've ever been. And so that's like kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy that players are like, oh, we don't want artificial difficulty, but we also want to be powerful, and we don't want sunsetting, but also we want loot to be interesting, but we want content to be hard, but we can't because... And that's to me why I feel like that reset post Light Dark Saga makes so much sense, because a lot of these issues would just be non-issues anymore, and you wouldn't have to spend all this time like reverting subclass balance and things of that nature. But with all of that said, we're getting short on time here. We probably have like 15 minutes left, so I want to ask the final question. And this is a controversial one for sure. With the Destiny content vault looming in the background and the challenges Bungie's faced with patch size and content bloat in the past, how can Bungie handle the next chapter of Destiny without pissing off the community as it relates to the DCV? And I'll let anybody start who wants to dive in on that one.
My response to this is pretty simple. I don't have much to say other than hardware limitations, really, right? I mean, isn't that like a huge portion of it?
I think the old gen consoles are still being supported as it stands right now.
Yeah, and they need to go.
Yep.
They need to stop. They need to stop supporting old gen consoles, and it needs to be only Xbox S and S, PlayStation 5, PC, you know, and that's it.
Yep.
Because until then, I'm pretty sure that's the biggest issue, because when we were at a summit, that's what they said to us. They had talked about this, and they said, unfortunately, with PlayStation and what it can hold, how would you guys feel if we started pocketing content away and incorporating it into the story?
Oh man.
Yeah. So
I mean, if you think about it, this is the other thing that I don't think people get. The old gen consoles are not just old. We're at the point where Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 or whatever, those are like 2-3 years old. Yeah. Like they're here. Yeah. Part of the reason I think that was so tough for people to get on board with them is we had all those limitations during COVID, but it's time. Like, I think just literally because it does take development time, and there again, this was the tweet that Sammy Cat had and some developer had connected with her and said, you know, you physically have to redraw and test all the old stuff. If you really want to move forward and you want to address the DCV, if you've got the resources to do it, which I don't think they do, I think they would be better served moving on to something forward and moving forward to Destiny 3. If you really wanted to do it, make Destiny 2 have final shape be the end. Boom, done. Here's all the stuff from the DCV. Here's all the raids. Here's all the stuff. If your hard drive can hold it, cool. Be done. Move on.
That's the difficult part about this discussion, right? Is like,
resources.
We're not developers. We don't know what it takes to do this sort of
It's
work.
a lot.
So we're speaking like very anecdotally like on this issue just in general. Like obviously we wouldn't want any content vaulted. We would want that in D2, but that also has challenges of patch size, that has storage limitations. I think the game's like 90 plus gigs as it is now. If you were to add in like an entire new chapter of Destiny beyond this that stays in D2, at what point do they phase this era of content out without making it feel like it's too soon? What content would that be? Like how do they go about doing that? And on top of that, you guys bring up the old gen consoles. Like you have the old gen issue to worry about. You've got not only just like the patch size, but also like QA and testing on a universe that large is just like a ridiculous, almost unrealistic expectation to hold. But then you're back to vaulting content, which people have shown they have a massive disdain for. It's like it's not a good thing to do for content you've already paid for and are actively selling right now. So if they were to go and then vault content soon, like they're still selling all of the DLCs, like such as Forsaken and everything else, this very moment. So like if they were to then turn around and vault it, in 12 months, that feels really bad as a consumer. So I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on like if it stays in this game, like where do we go? Yeah.
When did Bungie stop supporting Xbox 360?
That was Rise of Iron.
What year was that?
3.
2000. Wait, no. What? Like
2016.
2016 was it?
Yeah.
What year did
2016.
Xbox 360 come out?
2006, 7, something like that.
They could be
2007.
Okay,
Far less time than they've supported old gen on D2.
Xbox
Okay, so then my other
360?
question, you can see where this is going. When
Yep.
did Xbox One come out?
2013.
So it's been the same amount of time.
Yeah, I mean,
And
dude,
like,
I've been
or
calling
even
for
more.
that.
I mean, I sympathize with it, right? But like, that's
Yeah.
kind of the nature of technology, right? And I
Absolutely.
understand not everybody can
Yeah.
afford to upgrade, which sucks. But it's like, that is the era of technology. You can't expect to buy a piece of hardware and have it last and be supported. Like, I mean, look at iPhones. It's like
Part
2
of it
years
too-
and that shit's like, it's chalked.
Part of it too, though, is also the development systems that the company needs to have and the developers need to have. They need to have just that amount of time to be like, how does the engine run on this hardware? And that's the other equation that goes here. And Glad, I think you're right, because this is a perfect time for them to hop and do something different. And again, we don't know what it takes to build an engine. It takes a lot more work, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. But at the end of the day, the developers, this was another thing in that great book that Jason Schreier wrote, is that when they moved with the Tiger engine originally with Destiny 1, it took them for like 30 minutes to render in an object. And I know they've been updating stuff constantly in the game.
Right.
But they need that time with the new hardware, and we're at that perfect point. They've had it for 3 years now. We might be at that tipping point where it's time to take all that old gen stuff and just push forward into the next stuff. And yeah, you're right, it does stink, but at this point, I think that the prices have come down significantly. So I
Yeah.
think I know a lot of people in my community who did not have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. They're at the point now where almost everyone who wants one and has the finances for it can get one.
Yeah. I mean, and PC prices have come down substantially as well from like all the Bitcoin mining, and
Yeah,
all that
dude,
nonsense that was happening.
Technology as a whole has come down so much. If you want to go buy a TV, I remember when plasma TVs were this like unbelievable like thing that like your friend had, and you'd like go check out their parents like plasma TVs, like the rich kid
I
in
still
town.
have the Samsung
And
logo
now-
burned in on the bottom
Dude,
right of my
right?
TV.
And now everything's so cheap. Like you can go buy a TV for hella cheap comparatively to back then. And same with like, have you seen storage? Storage is like, dude, you can buy an SSD for like $20 right now.
It's true.
I mean, it might have a hamster on a wheel, but like you can buy an SSD for $20, dude.
You said that just for
Like-
Glad, didn't you?
Yeah, a little hammy on a wheel. Oh. No, but like realistically, like I don't know. I feel like after 3 years of Destiny 1, they were like, okay, it's time to drop old consoles and evolve something bigger. And then Destiny 2, it's been ever since then, people have been kind of calling for that. I felt like if they were gonna do it, it would have happened with the Beyond Light era, where they announced a new era of the game.
Yeah.
I feel like
much-
that would have made more sense for it to be then. And I mean, I have a lot of answers for what they could do as it relates to the DCV, but I mean, yeah, dropping old consoles is like the very technical limitation. That's like the very easy one first.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's like the biggest fucking issue because at the summit I heard from Bungie's mouth they specifically mentioned PlayStation storage not being able to hold all the content that they had for Destiny 2.
Wow.
And I'm not under NDA in this anymore because it's happened.
Yeah,
Like, you
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
the PS5 is also where Sony has put all of their attention anyway. Like they're not doing anything for PS4. Things are being PS5 exclusives.
How much more
I-
storage would actually open up? Like, what's the difference between a PS4, a PS5, an Xbox One, and an Xbox Series
Oh,
S and X?
so substantial. I guess the
wanna
best
say
way to
it's
put
like-
it would be like a
isn't it like-
960 versus like a 3080.
Didn't it go from like, I want to say it was like 250 gigabytes of storage up to like a terabyte
Yeah, no, I'm talking about
or two?
Oh,
storage,
storage.
not-
I'm
yeah,
dumb.
yeah.
Okay,
Something
yeah, my
like
bad.
that, like four to eight times as
You
much or
guys
something.
remember, like on the Xbox 360, you had this stupid hard drive that was shaped like the top of an Xbox. I don't know how many of you had Xbox.
Oh,
yeah,
I
dude,
remember
I
that.
remember
And you had to like
that thing.
install it, and now you can just like plug in one. Now it's just like so different, and now it's like, oh yeah, here's a terabyte PlayStation 5, no big deal, whatever. So
So
it's
could
Dude, I
you
remember.
anyway,
I
could
remember
you
the
fit
Xbox
all of-
360, the little Bluetooth earpiece that you would rock on the side.
Yo, I had that. Yo,
That thing was
Yes.
sick. It hurt your ear, but it was sick.
We're by no means like tech experts or anything, but like
No,
I think,
we're
I
not,
think
but
it's,
we
it's,
understand.
it's clear like there's some major issues that are kind of like rearing ahead, and they're all kind of boiling down to the point that like the franchise is experiencing a form of fatigue. Things have been around for a very long time, and there's systems in the game that like may not make a ton of sense in the current landscape, especially if you're going to continue driving this franchise forward. That I feel like with the final shape is like, it's kind of like the line in the sand where they need to decide what they want to do with like the DCV, old gen consoles. Do we, do we do a loot reset? Do we do a power reset with the 3.0 subclass? Maybe tone that back a bit. Like there's so many decisions I feel like kind of like line up right with this Saga ending, and maybe they planned it that way, but yeah, I mean those are the main topics I wanted to cover. So I think the final question, for the sake of time, and this will be a quick one, if you had one priority thing that could be covered for either you or your community heading into the final shape in a few in a few sentences, what would it be? I'll let anybody start.
The priority?
Like your number one priority, or like
Oh, yeah.
most wanted action item.
Make the best, biggest, longest, fantastic, girthy raid that I've ever seen.
I think
That's my number one priority.
Isn't
for
that more
me-
towards Bungie?
Oh, I thought you were
No,
talking
that-
about
I
the
mean,
final shape.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. So this is for final
Okay.
shape. So like,
Oh, okay, for the community.
No, for you or your community. So the raid is a great one.
Yeah, the raid is definitely my number. If I'm a fan of anything that Bungie has done, it is the conclusion with that gigantic raid. Make it the best one possible.
I agree, and it's actually what I said in the previous one, because you're coming to the culmination of this big, long story. This is the biggest bad we've ever fought. And on top of that, we've been kind of stuck in like this 2 mechanic encounter, 2 boss format for a really long time. And like we haven't had that like super extensive like multi-boss new raid in a really long time, like Wish or anything like that you see now, with like Oryx and the vast number of bosses between like Golgoroth and War Priest and everything in those like types of raids from D1. So I agree. I would love to see a more fleshed out raid that's like worthy of culminating a 10-year story. Glad, what about you?
I'm gonna get more specific on that. A trend that I've been seeing a little bit this year, really last couple of years, is there's nothing more disappointing in a game than just an underwhelming final boss fight.
Yeah.
And I saw this most recently with a survival game I just played. Just the final boss was just so disappointing. And then you see the opposite of that in a game like Remnant 2, where the final boss is literally the best possible experience that you could expect. You know, it lives up to its hype. And specifically with the raid, I just hope that the actual fight against the witness is just fantastic.
It kicks your ass
You
a
know?
little bit. Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just
for sure.
hope it is another Spire of Stars, another Valkor, like another really
dude.
amazing, mechanically dense, like just wonderful, crazy experience. You know, not even the raid as a whole. I just want that specific final fight to be so badass.
People hate on that encounter, and for one reason, because it actually required 5 teammates to actively be
The
doing
full
something
team
and
to-
understand what the hell's going
Yeah.
on. I totally agree.
Eh.
Mano, what about you?
They need to make Halo 3, but they need to make it for Destiny. It needs to be, if you are like describing Destiny, it needs to not be Forsaken. It needs to not be the Taken King. It needs to be the final shape. If you've ever, you have to have people like, oh yeah, you didn't play Halo 2, didn't play Halo 1, you play this. And that needs to encompass the raid. What other activities come? The secrets. There's got to be secrets there. It just can't be like, okay, here's 4 encounters and we're done. I think you're exactly right. I think we need to have not a final stand. I don't think we need 2 final stands. I think the witness needs to like 3 final stands and you are like holding on for dear life. Please let me finish. Oh my, no, he wiped it. Like that moment, because
The please Bungie
like, that
don't
would just,
troll moment.
yeah, exactly. But like I keep coming back to this, and I've said this before, like Destiny is defined in PvE by its raids. Destiny is defined in PvP, or it was by trials. Those are the 2 things that define Destiny. If someone said, whittle it down to like the most basic concept of what's the best pieces of content in this game, it's those 2 things in the dungeons. So those things have just got to slap. That's the #1 priority.
Can't be Root of
You just-
Nightmares, 100%.
So
I mean, and I'm not
if they
even
do
trying
that,
to
we're
be
good.
negative. It's like, I mean, that they created a raid that was solo flawless without using exploits, just using legit mechanics and movement to solo flawless a raid in Destiny, and that's wild. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that before, like where there's not like, you know, oobing or anything. Like they literally just did the mechanics by themselves and solo flawless an entire raid. That, like, the fact that there's not lockout mechanics for multiple members of a fire team to be involved is I feel like needs to change into the next DLC. They need to nail the boss fight, like you guys said. And I think the other part that goes into what Mano spoke about, they need to nail the new player experience and simplify the purchase path if they actually want the volume of Destiny players to grow. Because right now, I mean, like the video Aztecross did on like the financial side of Destiny, and like how many unique purchases and the like, just like how difficult of a purchase path it is to know what you're buying, what you need to play specific types of content. Like they need to release before a major expansion like a single thing that bundles all of the previous year's expansions together for a single price, and you buy it and you can go and play anything in the game. Like for me, it's like buying all these piecemeal like different DLCs and spending what I think it was like over $400 for all of the content now. Like how many new players are you getting invested with a price tag of 400 plus for years old content when you're trying to get people invested in your current story and get them into the arc of Destiny? I feel like should be a major priority heading into Final Shape, to even like begin to have that discussion of like, oh, this needs to be the one that everybody talks about that brings people back. Like if they don't have better new player mechanics and like a better purchase path, I think that all just is like out the window entirely.
Because it's all about onboarding, right? Like that's the whole idea of like Destiny 3. It's like a new experience. But like if people are excited about Final Shape, well, you need Divinity to get to Final Shape. Well, what do you have to do that? Like if you have to ask all these questions, be like Destiny pre-Final Shape, here's the Final Shape, and just simplify it.
Exactly.
And I know that they do that. You know, if you go to a buffet, if you think about it, how much do you not eat when you're there? Like you pick out the couple of things that you want. You
Dude,
can't
I
really
eat
do that
every
with
single
Destiny.
item.
Just the plate is just fucked.
Mountains of plates, dude.
Yeah,
Must
Korean
taste
barbecue gets destroyed.
everything.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Is like if you're gonna do that realistically, if you're not glad, you can go and like you have to kind of pick and choose. You can't really do that with Destiny. To get the full experience, give us the full experience, the full buffet for glad, I guess.
And it's hard to. And on that note, it's tough to convince people to pay full price for a year-old expansion, or like even $40. Like say it's slightly discounted. Like that's just, it's huge. Like I know Final Fantasy people are mentioning in chat they've bundled the previous expansion backward as like part of the subscription price, and then you pay for like the new stuff or whatever. And I definitely feel like that's a route they need to go down, because I feel like the whole free to try experience, it's not really a free to play because it's so limited in my opinion. Like it'll get people to download, but if you really want them to stick around, I feel like that's like should be the #1 thing that they work on, which doesn't necessarily benefit like, you know, the immediate Destiny community and their wants and needs, but like for the health of the game long term, I feel like that is just like has to be figured out sooner rather than later. But yeah, boys, thank you. I guess that wraps it up. I know Glad's on tight timelines, and I don't want to keep you guys too long. So, chat, show them some love for participating. Thank you guys so much for being part of this and having the discussions. All of their socials are right there for you guys if you want to go check them out on any you know, on X or YouTube or Twitch. I hate saying X. The X app.
Dude, that's where the X went in X Glad, bro. I've been it makes so much. Look at that X Glad right there, man.
Oh my god.
Holy
That
shit.
shit was so corny, dude.
Dude. I thought it was funny.
Oh man. All right, guys. Well, seriously, thank you so much for joining. Chat, show them some love, and yeah, thank you again for just taking time out of your day to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, man. Seriously.
Good hanging with y'all, yeah.
Yeah,
Guys,
likewise.
I'll let you guys go. Have a good rest of your days, and yeah, hopefully
Sounds
they
good.
deliver.
Hell yeah.
Later.
Later, guys.
Later, boys.
Yep.